Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome. Today, we are going to dive into a very important chapter from your civics textbook, power sharing. We will try to understand what this idea really means and why it is often called the very spirit, the soul of democracy.
So, here is our plan for today. First, we'll try to understand the main problem with power itself. Then, we will look at the stories of two different countries and see how they handle this problem. From what we learn, we'll understand why sharing power is so important, and finally, we'll explore the different ways modern democracies actually share power.
So let's begin with our first section, the problem with power. What exactly is this political power, and why do we need to be so careful with it?
To understand this, let's start with something we all know. Just think for a moment. Who makes the important decisions in your family or in your school? Is it just one person who decides everything, or do a few people discuss and then decide? Just keep that thought with you.
You see, just like a school needs a principal and teachers to run things smoothly, a country needs a government to make rules and decisions for everyone. This ability to make decisions for the entire country, that is what we call political power.
Now, imagine what would happen if only one class monitor was given all the power to make all the rules for the entire school. It could become a problem, isn't it? When one person or one group has all the power, there's a very high chance it can be misused. This can lead to arguments, and other students will feel that their voices are not being heard. Over time, this could even harm the unity of the school.
Okay, so to see how this works in the real world, let's now look at the stories of two countries. Both of them had different groups of people living together, but they chose very different ways to handle the problem of power.
The two countries we'll be studying are Belgium, which is a small country in Europe, and our neighbor, the island nation of Sri Lanka.
First, let's look at Belgium. Its social structure is quite complex. As you can see, 59% of the people speak Dutch, so they are the majority in the country. But, and this is the interesting part, in the capital city Brussels, the situation is completely opposite. There, 80% of the people speak French, making the Dutch speakers a minority. So, it's a very complicated situation.
Now, let's turn to Sri Lanka. Here, the situation is a bit different. The Sinhala-speaking community is a very clear majority, making up 74% of the population. The Tamil speakers, on the other hand, are a minority at about 18%. Now, before we see what happened in Sri Lanka, we must understand this one important term, majoritarianism. This is the belief that the majority community should be able to rule the country however it wants, even if it means ignoring what the minority community wants or needs. This is not the same as a simple majority vote. It's a belief system.
And this slide really shows us the two different paths taken. Sri Lanka followed majoritarianism. The government made Sinhala the only official language and gave special preference to Sinhala speakers for jobs and education. The result? The Tamil community felt left out, and this eventually led to a long and terrible civil war. Belgium, on the other hand, chose accommodation. They changed their constitution to make sure that both Dutch and French speakers had equal representation in the government. This way, they avoided conflict and the country stayed united.
So, what is the big lesson we learned from these two stories? Well, they clearly show us why sharing power is so important. Let's explore the reasons for this a little more deeply.
There are two main sets of reasons for sharing power. The first one is what we call a prudential reason. You can think of this as the smart or practical reason. Sharing power reduces the chances of conflict and keeps the country stable. It just leads to better results. The second one is the moral reason. This is the reason based on values, the right thing to do. It says that power sharing is the very spirit of democracy, because in a democracy, people have a right to have a say in how they are governed.
This quote explains the danger very well. Forcing the wishes of the majority on everyone else might seem like an easy solution at first, but as we saw in the case of Sri Lanka, in the long run it can destroy the unity of the entire nation. This is sometimes called the tyranny of the majority.
Now, a question might come to your mind. If we have to ask so many people and groups before making a decision, won't that make everything very slow? And that's a very good question.
And the answer is, yes, sometimes it can be slower. But think about it. A decision that is made after listening to everyone is much more likely to be accepted by everyone. This creates long-term stability, which is much more valuable than short-term speed. It is better to make a good decision that lasts, even if it takes a little more time.
So, now that we are clear on why power sharing is so crucial, let's move to our last section. Let's see how modern democracies actually share power. What are the different methods they use?
We can say that there are 4 main forms, or types, of power sharing. Let's go through them one by one.
The first type is called horizontal distribution. Here, power is shared between the different organs of the government, which are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. They are all at the same level, and each one keeps a check on the others. This makes sure that no one organ becomes too powerful. This is the famous system of checks and balances.
The second type is vertical distribution. This time, imagine a ladder. Power is shared between different levels of government. There is a government for the entire country, which we call the central or union government. Then there are governments for each state, and then even lower at the local level. This system is also called a federal system, which is what we have in India. Power can also be shared among different social and political groups. For example, some countries have special arrangements to give a voice to minority communities, like the community government in Belgium. And power is also shared between political parties. When no single party gets a clear majority in an election, different parties come together to form a coalition government, and they share the power.
And all of this brings us to the most fundamental idea of this entire chapter. Power sharing is essential because, in a real democracy, all political power comes from the people, and a truly democratic government is one that gives due respect to all the different groups and views that exist in the society.
So, I will leave you with this final question to think about. After everything we've discussed, what do you think? Is sharing power a sign of weakness that makes a country slow, or is it the greatest strength of a democracy, the thing that holds a diverse country together? I want you to think about that. Thank you so much for joining me today.